Hey everyone, time for another Q&A. Today's Q&A is from Karen Kelbaugh. And Karen's question is, when your ideas are bigger than your capacity or time to create them, what do you do? She says, I think I know what you'll tell me, but how do you feel like you aren't settling when you just don't have the time or expertise or funds to hire the expertise to make what you really want to do? Well, of course, Karen, I am so curious to find out what you really want to do. So can you please tell me in the comments or just write to me personally, because I want to know what it is. And then, yes, of course, you know what I'm going to tell you, which is you do have time. I think there's probably some other hesitation or objection behind feeling like you don't have time. And one of the issues might be just a reframing about what it means to have time for the thing. So I have 4 books that I want to write for my business, and I want to revive my visual art making practice this year in 2020. I'm not going to write all 4 books, but I'm heading myself in that direction. And I have this visual art practice to get back to, which has been tabled for the last few years as I've been in this kind of intensive stage of building my business. And on paper, it would look like there isn't a single minute in the day to do any of these things. I have a child who's still young, I have health issues, I have a business that's very full-time, I have a very full life, I have all kinds of commitments. And it seems impossible on paper. And you should read the book Atomic Habits. I actually haven't read it yet, but I've heard James Clear talk about this on podcasts. And I think I loved it because it aligns so much with what I've learned about my own creative process. And I've started doing this with these goals that I have for this year. If you start to touch that project every day in some way, it begins to move. And so for me, I've been touching this book project and touching the visual art project every day. And sometimes that means it's literal. So I came in here on Sunday and I made a pile of visual experiments. These are the beginnings of my visual art creating practice this year. And there was another day last week that I wrote for an hour towards a book outline. Since then, I've had a really busy schedule, but I make sure every day I literally touch these, like touch them, look through them, think about them, take pictures of them, play with them on Photoshop for 10 minutes, whatever it is. And the act of staying connected to them has made me excited to get back to them. It's kept it top of mind. I had a dream about my visual art making one night. And now tonight, I'm going to have an hour and a half sliver of time when I'm going to get to go back to them. So it's about keeping part of your attention on it, and then it will make time for itself, which is kind of magical. And the same thing with the book. So I've been doing something around the book every day, rereading my outline. If I have no time at all, I'll just reread the outline in 5 minutes. Or I'll take my journal with me when I'm sitting on the bus, and I'll just write some thoughts that are on top of mind. If I'm listening to a podcast, I'll try to find a podcast that's somehow related to the topic of my book. So I'm just deciding to put my mind there, even if I don't have the capacity to put a lot of hours there. And there's always some way to put your mind there, or to somehow touch, physically or metaphorically touch the project every day. And it begins to, the solutions to how to find the time and the capacity begin to make themselves apparent. And there are so many more solutions. That thought of, I can't do it, I don't have capacity, is a very powerful thought that creates its own reality. And the opposite of that thought isn't to suddenly create a lot of time. I think the opposite is to say, I can pay attention to this. I am a writer. I'm writing every day. I am a visual artist. I'm making art every day in some way. and turning your attention towards it even before you can put your time on it, even if that's for 5 minutes. And it works really, really powerfully for me. It just opens a channel to doing the work. And then suddenly time starts to open up for it. Or I'm able to squeeze chunks of time open, clear a wider and wider path as I go, because I keep putting my attention on it. And what James Clear talks about in Atomic Habits is how those tiny, tiny incremental things don't seem to give you immediate gratification. You don't get instant reward. But as they accumulate over time, those are the kind of changes that create over the long term an exponential up curve, right? So whatever the thing is you really want to do that you don't think you have the capacity to do, start putting your attention towards it, even in a kind of ritual way on a daily basis, and see how your thinking starts to become more flexible about how you can make it happen. And tell me what it is, because I want to hear. All right, hope this is helpful to you. Hope this is helpful to any of you who have this, which I think is probably just about all of us. Okay, bye.